Hello, everybody. Welcome back to CUNTY Life and Biz Realness. I'm so excited today because it is a guest interview with a dear biz bestie friend of mine, Maddie Cartwright, who is an incredible entrepreneur, so resilient, so badass, so passionate. And I am so grateful to have met her this past year, 2023, right? I don't even know. The time is all wonky, but beginning of 2023. That's why it feels like a long time ago. And so, Maddie, I will let you introduce yourself because I think we do our best work when we just tell the people who we are.
I'm going to use like a cheat sheet because I thought actually I'm an excellent writer and I'm really proud of my Substack profile description. So I'm just going to read it to you. And that's my introduction.
Sounds good.
So I'm a tarot reader and teacher. I'm a vegan. I'm an activist, a community builder, a storyteller, a grassroots animal rescuer, a micro sanctuary caregiver, and I'm the founder of a wildlife tarot. I teach tarot as a tool for self-liberation so we can all work towards collective liberation.
Yes.
Neat.
Yay! I love it so much. So can I just tell, or do you want to tell people, like, you tell people how we met? Because I've told this story already, so I'd like to hear, people would like to hear it from your perspective.
I almost cut you off earlier to say, I remember when we first met because I will never forget it. So we were in Puerto Rico at the inaugural ROI Summit through Hello 7. Yeah. It was the very last official event of the weekend. It was the dance party at the end of the conference. And that shit was lit. Anybody that was there knows, like, I think half of us sadly and terribly got COVID, but kind of irresponsible.
But it was, you had to have been there though at the same time.
But it was so much fun. It was so liberating. And I remember being on the dance floor. You were up on the stage. Just doing your thing.
It wasn't even a stage. It was like a ledge. It was
like a ledge, right? Literally right in front of the DJ. And you were just having the fucking time of your life. And I was like, that one, I like her. And then we were leaving. Everybody was going home. And there was like one of those, I don't know what they're actually called, but they're like those branded like backdrops where you pose to take pictures. And someone was taking pictures of you. I think you had requested that someone take some pictures of you. And you
I think they wanted pictures first. So then I coached them through it. And then I was like, okay, can you do that for me too?
I don't think I ever knew the context, but you were just like Vogue posing. Like, she's fabulous, but you were talking about yourself, and I was just like in awe of you. I was like, I don't know who this bitch is, but we are going to be friends. And then you showed up to my tarot workshop that I hosted right after that weekend to help everybody process what we learned.
What the hell just happened?
In front of like 30 people was like, I'm sorry, who are you? We're friends now. Just so you know, I fucking love you. You are such a shiny ball of light. I need you in my life.
Oh my God.
And that's how we met.
And I just like, and I tell this story all the time too, because like, I love that you did that, because sometimes we just like feel awkward or shy or like to say like, hi, can we be friends, as adults? So that's one. I love that you did that. And then the other thing is I talk about it in the context of like, miracles happen when you are your true, like, liberated self. And that's the part that we don't know. And it's hard to quantify and it's hard to market the miracles that are going to happen when you are liberated, when you're yourself, because we don't know. But it's it's always something incredible. And so in this case, like by me just liberating myself, which took a lot of amping myself up to do, before the party, uh, and then just like courage during the party to just like release any like self limiting beliefs and just like allow myself to just dance freely. Um, it just led to miracles. So I tell that story often, and I love you, and I'm so
Wait,
glad.
are you saying that our friendship is a miracle? Because that's so
Yeah.
flattering, and I love that. Oh
Of course it is. Don't you think? Like, I just
I
think
do.
when you find people that truly see you, and that understand you and that support you, like, especially in these chapters in entrepreneurship and in like finding ourselves in adulthood and liberation and all this stuff, like when you find people who really love you, that is a fucking miracle in my books.
Yeah, I also am a little spiritual about it, and I think I've believed this since high school that there are some relationships and connections that you'll have in your life that are just inevitable. Like
Mm.
they're just truly kind of meant to be.
Aw. There you go. There you go. So you
You're
never
my
I
inevitable biz bestie.
Oh, yay! Like
So
you
much.
never know, and I said this on a previous episode, so if whoever's listening, if you go back to the episode of return on investment, your ROI, this goes into that, right? Because I really talked about all the different types of ROI other than just like financial ROI, right? So a new friendship, a new biz bestie friendship is an ROI that I got from that ROI summit. And this is very meta. Um, it's not a financial one, right? It's like it's relationship based. And so this is magical when we can consider other types of ROI in our business. So go back and listen to that one as well. But first, let's listen and let's chat today, Maddie, because I need the people to know who you are. And you've already introduced yourself. And I want you to be able to share your stories because you have some incredible stories. You're an incredible human being. You have a mission on this earth that is so admirable, and you are so passionate, and you pursue it with such fervor that it is just infectious. And you transmit your passion through your work to other humans that are also pursuing their missions, and it's just incredible. So do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, like how you support people in your tarot readings and in your life and business in general? Like, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Feel free to give me some bumpers too, because I might go down a rambly rabbit hole. But I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe the best place to start is the origin story of my tarot business.
Mm.
So, before I started doing tarot readings for other people for money,
Mm-hmm.
I was in the world of grassroots animal rescue and farmed animal sanctuary caregiving and building out care programs, which is a very niche bubble in the world
Mm-hmm.
and very, very different from what I do now. But the reason why I started my tarot business was I was doing a lot of traveling that was very spontaneous. It was all get up and go emergency rescue work, specifically with chickens. And
Mm-hmm.
so I found myself in this life chapter between day jobs at different sanctuaries. And I was starting to feel burned out. And
Mm-hmm.
I was connected to a really strong network of fellow friends and rescuers. And um, I would, get a phone call and find myself flying from Brooklyn to Colorado to liberate a bunch of baby chickens from a factory farm. And then I would find
Mm.
myself going with a friend to do undercover investigative work in San Antonio at a rodeo. And I was
Mhm.
traveling a lot. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to sustain that deeply fulfilling mission in my life if I had another day job, because having a boss means that you don't get to control your schedule, you can't control your income, and it just seemed like a totally unrealistic fit for this very unconventional lifestyle that I was totally in love with because it was my purpose and my mission in life. And so very naively, I was like, I had already started my tarot practice, and it had been a part of my own liberation from a previous very dark situation in my life. And I had been doing readings for friends all the time. I was like, oh, well, I can just start a side hustle, and then I can do tarot anywhere. All I need is my deck, maybe an internet connection. And the naive part was thinking that it would be that simple to build a business and actually make a living wage. So the vision has transformed since then, but that was the reason why I started my tarot business. It was very self-serving so that I could have the freedom of time, money, and energy to do rescue work, because that's what I wanted to do with my life.
A question I have as well is, because a big purpose that you say often, and it was also in your bio, is like collective liberation through personal liberation. And so talk us through how you went from starting your tarot business because it was, it would allow you to do what you truly loved as well, right? And then give you that flexibility, to how you just understood how much of a tool it was for that purpose of like self and collective liberation.
Yeah. I always say self-liberation leads to collective liberation. I don't think I have like a moment where I was like, oh, I think it was always just like a very intuitive, obvious knowingness since I started my tarot practice, because that's how it served me. I really believe, especially because we both belong to communities and circles of people who are maybe anti like hustle bro culture. If you're talking about like the online entrepreneurial world, it's very much rooted in like, I want to start a business to create a radical positive impact in the world, and I want to be my highest and best self so I can help liberate others from whatever is oppressing them. And that's kind of the glue that holds a lot of our communities and friendships together. It's our shared core values. And that's very true through tarot work. Like, I'll use myself as an example, but I think it's super relatable to anybody who will listen to this. Like, when we allow ourselves to stay stuck, we often think that it's because of the same excuses that we hear when we're even doing sales. It's like, oh, I don't have enough time or money or energy to go do these things that would radically change my life or allow me to have an expansive impact in the world. But really, those are kind of like these surface level excuses for underlying root causes, where it's like really about limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, even old trauma, fear.
And another big one that I'm realizing as well is like tying your worth to productivity, right? And that's where a lot of that, like, I don't have time, and like I can't, do self-care as much because I'm busy working. Sorry, continue. I just needed to point that out because I'm working through that one right now. So if anyone else is feeling that, continue. Sorry.
No, that's a really good point, and that's like a whole other thing that I preach through tarot work all the time. You have to take really good care of yourself in order to sustain your business, and if your business is meant to have a radical impact on the world, then it best be sustainable.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so,
but don't we sometimes we get like a superhero complex where we think like, no, I'm so passionate about the thing that like I'm just going to be endlessly energized by it and nothing else. Like, I find that sometimes my ego thinks that way or something, that like it doesn't need all the care.
I'm
and the
going to blame
sustainability.
influencer culture on that in the coaching industry, especially online, because I think that's a
Okay.
fantasy. It is a
Mm-hmm.
fantasy to think like all I have to do is like follow the whole stupid quote of like do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's such bullshit if you're the kind of person who actually pursues that
Yeah.
with intention. Like this shit
Yeah.
is work.
Yeah.
So here's how I'm holding myself back right now until kind of today. And before we started recording, I was talking about how nervous I am for this podcast interview because it feels like a big pivotal moment for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
When we allow our fears and our internal blocks, and especially when we deny our intuition, when we just know something feels out of alignment, then we find all these tricky excuses and ways like I don't have the time, money, and energy to actually pursue what I know I should be doing right now. And it usually doesn't take
Yeah.
what you think it will. It's usually just like a very clear, specific, direct action step that's terrifying to you.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, especially through the people that I serve the most, which is activists, artists, and entrepreneurs who want to have a radical positive impact on the world, if we liberate ourselves from our own personal blocks and take that clear, direct action step to move forward towards stepping into our purpose and expanding our impact, that is what directly leads to collective liberation. And as a tarot reader, when I serve people who are trying to get out of their own way so that they can have this massive positive impact, then my service of one person is creating this ripple effect that can literally change the world because their self-liberation will lead to the collective liberation that comes through the work that they do in the world. And that's why my tarot business
Yes.
has become much less of a self-serving side hustle and much more essential to the core of my mission in life, which is collective liberation.
Yes. I love it. And I'm always like, I always keep this in the back of my head, but sometimes, and I don't know if anyone who's listening can relate to this, but sometimes it can be harder to connect to that bigger picture of how our work and how our personal liberation can lead to collective liberation. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, but I guess, do you have any good clarification for that or like an example of that to like help bridge that kind of big divide?
I think I have a really good piece of advice that I got from my very first business coach, which
Cool.
is focus on who you're serving. Really try,
Mhm.
and not in like a judgmental way, but don't make it about you. It's not about
Mhm.
you. Like, what is your mission? What is your
Yeah.
purpose? What kind of impact do you want to make in the world? How much do you honestly care about it? Do you really care about it? Because there might be some people out there listening to this who are doing a business that's maybe built around a skill set that they had in the corporate world and was just the obvious thing to start a business around once they transition out of their day job and start their own thing.
Yeah.
But is that really what lights your soul up inside? Do you really want to
Mhm.
be like a marketing strategist? Maybe you do. No
Yeah.
hate to marketers at all. But like
Yeah.
maybe you want to do something else. And that's also, I don't think I ever finished my thought about how I'm keeping myself stuck. But I'm having that moment right now where it's like I keep building out this tarot business that I love and is a core part of my mission in life, but it's not my purpose. And I know that.
Mhm.
And I only have
Mhm.
so much time and energy. And I'm really
Mhm.
trying to be brave enough to step more into my purpose, which is really rooted in animal rights and animal liberation and finding a way
Yes.
to monetize it. And that's a big fucking scary pivot for me right now. And
Mhm.
so don't don't let your fear stop you from creating an impact. Try not to make it about you. Shift your mindset from like I feel so nervous or scared or anxious about this right now and that's what's blocking you from taking those direct action steps and try to focus on your vision for the impact that you want to have. If you are able to get out of your own way, what is the result? And this kind of comes full circle to what you said about productivity and how we measure our success. This really bothers me in our entrepreneurial circles, because I think the way that we measure our success is literally by dollars. And right now I'm participating in a 10K in 10 days challenge, which I know is going to light a fire under my ass. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do it. It's very empowering and inspiring.
Yeah.
But also, I don't think we should be solely measuring our success on productivity and how much money we make through our businesses. I'm much more interested in what are you doing with the money that you make, but more importantly, what result did you get for whoever you are serving? If you changed somebody's life, but they didn't pay you, or they didn't pay you that much, that seems way more successful and productive and valuable to me on a fulfilling spiritual level than I charge somebody $10,000 because I raised my prices and that's such a win for me, which is also a cool, powerful thing. But
and can we have both? Of course, like there can be room for both and of all of that, right? Like it's expanding it's making room for that, like, and right, like expanding what is possible and what our definition of success can be in addition to dollars and cents. So like, yes, I'm always like, I want people, especially like historically marginalized people, to challenge themselves to, like if they gave someone a really good transformation for maybe like no money or a very low price, whatever, like understanding their value better and understanding what they're capable of in this world, and then maybe increasing the price, or like just seeing themselves as higher value, something like that. But I really love the point that you're bringing up of like how to measure success differently. And one thing I wanted to ask really quick, I have lots of questions, but one question I had was, if someone is like trying to make a leap or trying to make a change towards something that like sets their soul on fire a little bit more, how would you, maybe using tarot or something, help them to see that bigger picture? If they're not necessarily the visionary type that can see how them doing something that really lights them up, and it's like if they're an artist, if they're an entrepreneur of any kind, what did you say, artist, entrepreneur, an activist, but they don't necessarily know how changing to that thing is going to make a change in the world, how would you bridge that gap for them? Do you have any ideas for that, and how do you do that for yourself as well?
It's a really good question. I think about this a lot, actually, because I wonder if I as a tarot reader, I wonder if I can actually do that for people and what my success rate is with it, because that's always what I'm trying to do. That's always what I want to do, is like help people connect to their purpose and their mission in life and then go pursue it so they can have this expansive impact that's part of my vision for collective liberation. I would say the art of tarot is really about asking the right questions and peeling back the layers and really getting down to it until you have a lot of clarity around what you want and what your next right step is to go and do that thing or manifest that thing or achieve that thing, and what your path forward is for growth towards your mission in life overall. And so I would ask a lot of questions about, do you have something that feels like your mission or your purpose in life, and not just what you're good at or what you want to build a business around, but like it really creates this physical feeling in your body. It creates prana, energy, heat in your body when you think about it or when you participate in it, that makes you feel activated and alive and meaningful? Do you have that thing? Do you know what it is? And I think a ton of people don't. And I listen, I'm a binge podcast listener. I listen to a lot of hosts of other podcasts try to get at the heart of that question, where it's like, how do you figure out what your thing is, your mission and your purpose in life? And there are some very famous, notable thought leaders and coaches that don't even believe there is such a thing as a purpose.
Right.
And I don't know. That's interesting to me, but I disagree. I think everybody has that thing that matters so much to them that it gives them a reason to be alive, even when living feels like it sucks really hard. And it's that thing that's just always keeping you going. For me, it's animal rights and rescue work and caregiving. And I've been through some incredibly dark chapters where I really lost the will to live. And the thing that got me through that was knowing my purpose.
Yes.
And therapy and tarot. Knowing my purpose, therapy and tarot got me through the darkest chapter of my life, for sure.
So I want to like peel back the layers of that collective liberation part. I want to like get people understanding and feeling inspired that like them doing the thing that like lights their soul on fire and that feels, you know, purposeful and passionate for them can lead to collective liberation.
Yeah, I think everybody's thing is going to be different.
For sure.
I think sometimes people get stuck in the trap of really thinking that it has to also be a job.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's a good starting point to figure it out. And it might not always be a job. You know, I came into this business and I think I've always had the heart of an activist, and activists don't make money. One of my personal challenges with really wrapping my head and my heart around coaching people on how to go vegan has been bridging my own gap of limiting beliefs, going from being an animal rights activist where you can't even get people to listen to you for free. Nobody wants to hear it. Everybody is so turned off by it. And I went vegan like 12 or 13 years ago when it was definitely not popular.
Right.
It's trendy now. It kind of blows my mind how fast that change happened in pop culture. But like it was very unpopular not that long ago. And I have had to do a lot of inner work. I am still very much at the beginning of my own healing process around accepting the fact that people will pay me to help them to go vegan if they really want to do that. Because I'm used to really feeling so mad and hopeful and passionate about wanting to help people go vegan for free. And coming from like an activist mindset, thinking about like, how do I figure out what my mission or my purpose is in life? Well, don't think about it through the framework of it being a job first.
Yeah.
You know, I always suggest people start with, what makes you so fucking mad about the world that you want to rage scream into a pillow for an hour? Like, what sets your soul on fire where you would literally get up off your ass, walk outside of your house, and go join a protest, even as an introvert who has never done anything like that before? What lights that inner fire in your soul? What do you feel like healing?
Yeah. And if someone doesn't know the answer to that, would a tarot session help them find the answer to that? With you, a tarot session with you?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's all just about asking questions and then being really honest with yourself and surrendering to your own inner truth and following your intuition. That's the process of a tarot practice. So I'm just going to ask you a lot of questions that you probably feel too busy or uncomfortable to ask yourself. People avoid it. I feel very lucky that for whatever reason, sometimes I blame it on my birth chart. I have a lot of placements that seem to explain this, but I have always been the kind of person who wants to stare at the center of the truth and deeply understand it from a place of radical empathy. When people started doom scrolling during the pandemic, right after George Floyd's murder, and everybody was having like this collective mental health crisis, this is a bit of a vulnerable share, but I felt so connected to people. I actually felt very safe and at home within myself during 2020, the first year of the pandemic, because finally I felt like, oh, okay, it's not just me.
Yeah,
Everyone
people were
is staring at
actually
the
talking
heart
about it.
of the truth, and everybody
Yep.
feels fucked up about reality right now. It's not just me. And before
Yeah.
that, especially with veganism, outside of my own vegan community, I felt so lonely because I was like, why does nobody else see this? It's right in front of you
Yeah.
everywhere, all day, all the time. Why does this
Yeah.
not fuck up anybody else? Like,
Yeah.
this is like there are many different forms of systemic violence within our society that are rooted
Yeah.
in capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy and all of those things. There is no lack of causes for you to be mad about. Everybody is
Yeah.
going to connect to their own thing.
Yeah.
But I think for whatever reason, I'm the kind of person that just needs to stare at the heart of the truth and try to understand it and do something to be a helper in the world. And I think society teaches us to look the other way, to avoid it,
Yes.
to shut it down. And I think your purpose probably lies in staring at the heart of the truth of whatever really fucking kind of traumatizes you, honestly. And
Yeah.
it might not be the
Yes.
best fit for everybody to build their life around a thing that feels like trauma to their heart. But for me,
Right.
and I think a lot of activists, that is what gives us a sense of purpose and fulfillment and meaning in the world.
Yeah.
I try to
Yeah.
bring that out of people and help them realign with their core values and their integrity and what matters most to them, and then help them have the courage to go pursue whatever work they feel like will lead to their own version of collective liberation. And I help them
Yeah.
achieve self-liberation through our tarot sessions so they can go do their meaningful work in the world, even if they just figured out what that is and they've never done it
Right.
before.
Right. Because the idea is whatever they do is probably going to be in service to the collective, right? Like that's kind of the idea. And that's something that makes us as humans like social. And that's what kind of can drive a purpose, is that we feel like we're doing something in service to someone. My example of this, for example, is my gender fuckery, right? So I fuck with gender. I rebuke like societal gender norms as much as I can. I mean, like everybody has their threshold on this. For me, it's my body hair. And it's something that, like, as you're saying, like I can rage scream at people that are so oppressive about policing our bodies, policing our self-expression, all of this. And that's not necessarily what my business is all about. I don't necessarily coach people on how to not shave their legs, but it's like it's what lights my soul on fire, and it like permeates what I do, and it like the way that it leads to collective liberation is that by me freeing myself and inspiring others to free themselves, that is on the path to collective liberation through gender expression specifically. So like that is the piece for me, whereas for you the piece sounds like animal liberation, right? For someone else it might be artistic liberation. Like for example, Beyonce, who's like fuck genres. We're just going to say fuck genres. I want to make an album that is just cross genre and y'all can go fuck off.
Yes.
Right?
You asked a really interesting question, which I've never really thought about before. And I think we're just kind of teasing it out, which is like, how can you help people understand how their work actually leads to collective liberation?
Yeah.
And it depends on
Yeah.
what their work is. But your example is really good. It's like you you enjoy the process of gender fuckery and you're not coaching people on how to not shave, although I think that's a very niche offer. Maybe there are people out there who need that. I think you should just throw it out there and see what happens.
My DMs
I'm a no
are
shave
open.
coach.
Listen,
follow that thread for a minute, because really, what is not shaving about? And we both, I love that you didn't know this about me for a very long time, but I also haven't shaved in many years. And so
collective liberation.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
What happens to someone who was raised in a culture where they were taught that they have to conform to all of these gender norms, including not shaving? You learn that your body is not your own. You have to fit into some kind of box in order to be socially acceptable. And it's very important to humans on just like an animal level to be part of the collective. We are herd animals. And if you, in the background of your mind, have been gaslit your whole life into this belief that like, I have to control myself, I have to look a certain way, I'm not in charge of making this decision, this is a dangerous decision for me to make, I might be ostracized if I let myself just be my most authentic self. And be visible that way. Say more about that.
So like, I know, not me specifically, I've never been physically hurt, but this is a big problem in the trans community. Like, there's physical violence, people threatening based solely on how someone is expressing themselves and their version of their gender that day, or whatever it is that makes them feel liberated, and like just fucking with gender and saying like, actually, this makes me feel really euphoric, but it's not necessarily what society thinks. And there's a lot of like physical violence that's actually threatened and that actually happens. And it's like, and it can be really extreme in a lot of cases, like even murder, which is just absolutely gut wrenching. So like living in this body the way it is and showing up publicly with it is this declaration that it's like, I care so much about this, and I care so much that about other people being able to free themselves, that I'm willing to expose myself to risk for the greater good. So I guess that's the collective liberation piece. It's like, what do you want to do for the greater good, maybe?
100%. And that is also activism. Just by being visibly your most authentic self for you personally, that is activism. Because it's not just an idea that it is dangerous for us to allow ourselves to be ourselves in a world that's super fucked up in a lot of ways. That is a reality. And for a lot of people who do experience very real, horrifying amounts of harm. And so even in small ways, by normalizing like, no, actually, womanhood is not just synonymous with not having body hair. Actually, it can be quite normal to have hairy legs as a cishet white woman. Deal with it. Who fucking cares? It's not about, life is not about that. That doesn't have to matter to you so much. And if it does bother you that much, maybe we can have a conversation about it, or maybe you can go reflect on that, or maybe you can exist in a world where more women are just being like, you know what? I just don't feel like shaving my armpits. And that supports other communities who are like, look, this is what my body looks like.
I really want to come back to your story, which I think was a really good introduction to the question I was going to ask of like, tell us about a time in your life where you had to be cunty. And you started to tell us about when you went vegan and the world was not receptive to it at that time. I think that is incredibly cunty. So I would, if you want to tell us more about that and like how you got through that, because that's a lot of like what we talk about on this podcast is like, how do you get through those moments that are like, society is going against you. You feel like it's really tough to do something, but you feel called to do it. And so you have to really dig deep and be courageous, unapologetic, notable, transcendent, and you authentically. Like, how did you do that?
I followed my intuition, and it was also inevitable. It was an unrelenting spiritual need that I could not deny anymore. Like, I just felt compelled to do it. And it was that experience, both with like June's rescue and going vegan, very different timelines. But like, I just knew that I could not hold myself back anymore. Like,
what did that feel like? And how did you know that? Like, cause I asked this because I know there are so many of us that like feel maybe like a tug or like a pull. And sometimes we need help like understanding. And I asked Pearl this question as well, I think. Like, how do you know? How do you know when your intuition is like telling you something or maybe screaming at you? And how do you listen to it? So tell us more about what that looked like and felt like in that time.
you have to be brave enough to surrender to your own inner truth. I think we get really busy and really good at burying it and avoiding it and not wanting to acknowledge it or accept it. That's it's kind of an intangible idea as opposed to like a very clear and direct instruction. But you have to allow yourself to face your own inner truth, and then you have to allow yourself to follow your intuition. So, with June's rescue story, I was already involved in grassroots animal rescue work. I had been doing it for a few years in some pretty high stakes environments. So, this is also her rescue was a different year, but the situation around her rescue is like the origin story for how I got involved in rescue work specifically. And I'll try to make this a short description, but I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I started volunteering for a sanctuary, and through that sanctuary, I learned about this annual tradition that happens within a certain neighborhood and population within the city, and it's built around religious sacrifice, which is very niche and rare, but the most audacious thing about it was that it was happening in full view in public. So like normally, so June was rescued from underneath a truck parked on the side of a slaughterhouse. And in society, our food animals used for food in quotation marks, comes from these really violent spaces that we do not have access to, and that is very much on purpose. Everybody jokes about not wanting to know how the sausage is made, but that is also very literal, you know? So we never have to face the truth of our food system in that way. But this was basically like a series of pop-up slaughterhouses just on Brooklyn sidewalks. Like it was right around the corner from a subway entrance. Like it's just there. If you walked past it, you would smell it, you would hear it, you would see it. It would be disturbing to you. And so the morning that she was rescued was September 18th, I believe, or 19th in 2018. She was part of this ritual sacrifice practice called Kaporos. It happens within the Hasidic community, especially in Brooklyn. People travel all over the world to come participate in it. To that community, it's a very celebratory festival. But for people who care about animal rights, it's this very disturbing, traumatic public display of ritual slaughter. And they'll drive in multiple commercial transport trucks with crates of like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of chickens. It's been estimated that up to 100,000 chickens are slaughtered in Brooklyn every year for this practice. And there's a lot of rescue opportunities when you've got a bunch of caged animals being killed on a public sidewalk. And so the activist network I had been involved with for many years had shown up to protest the practice, and then we would wait around all night while they're slaughtering all of these animals, looking for opportunities to rescue them. So sometimes people actually participating in the practice would feel compassionate enough to just like give us a chicken instead of allowing them to be slaughtered. But that is incredibly rare. But there are some rescue stories about that. June specifically was spotted by another activist hiding under the tires of a transport truck the morning after most of the birds had already been killed. And by that time, this pop-up slaughterhouse had garbage cans like just overflowing with the dead bodies of chickens. There were two other chickens hiding with her underneath the truck. The truck driver was about to start driving away. He had already turned over the engine, and people were trying to stop him because he was about to crush these baby chickens under the tires of the truck once he started driving away. And I just had this mama bear energy in me as soon as I was alerted to what was happening. And he started to put the truck in reverse, and I walked up to the window. I slammed my hand against the driver's side window so he would see me, and I dove under the truck, and I army crawled through like these puddles of blood and New York street, city puddle water nastiness. And I grabbed them and I crawled out from under the truck and handed them over to some other activists. And I ended up taking June home. She had a really deep laceration on the back of her head. She had a toe that was severed. She was dehydrated. She was anemic. They had been out on the city street for a week without food or water. She needed emergency medical care right away. And I fell so in love with her that I just ended up taking her home and adopting her. And she's been with me for over 5.5 years now. And she's my baby. So thinking about like, how did I make the CUNTY decision to rescue her? I think there's different many questions within that question. Like, how was I brave enough to show up and participate in something like that in the first place? How was I brave enough to dive under a moving semi truck? How was I brave enough to take her home and be like, I've never taken care of a chicken in my own house before. I'm not set up for this. I didn't plan for this. I'm just going to figure out a way to do it. I think it all comes back to it being part of my purpose. Like, it was just a feeling that I had in my body where it's like, there's not a whole lot of room for questioning. It's just like, this is what I feel compelled to do right now, and I'm going to follow my intuition. This is urgent and important, and it just needs to happen. And I'm going to go do this brave thing that a lot of other people would look at and be like, oh, you're completely crazy.
When really, like, it's the practice that's completely crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I feel from your story, is like the fact that, but it's that age-old thing. And this, from anybody's activist perspective, it always feels like this. It's like what society is used to is actually the thing that's crazy. But they make us feel like we're the crazy ones. Like it's so much gaslighting, when really when you think about it, it's actually just what we've been trained to think. That's usually the most fucked up crazy shit. Like, it's not even the stuff that we're doing differently. This brings up another question in me that I wonder about as activists and as people who are like doing things against like societal norm. The word impulse and impulsive gets thrown out a lot, especially in like the business world too. Like, oh, that was an impulsive decision. You didn't like think that through enough. So as someone who is like a more like someone, I follow my intuition, I follow my gut, I try to make decisions based on that, I listen to that. How do you stand firm in that when people are questioning you as like an impulsive person? Like, how do you make that distinction?
I see versions of this question happening around me all the time where people are just wondering, like, how do I literally trust and follow my intuition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it really depends on the circumstances. So, to really specifically answer the question about doing that through tarot work, again, tarot is about peeling back the layers and asking a lot of questions. So,
Mm-hmm.
either through a reading with me or somebody else, or through your own home practice, you have this really safe space to just have a very honest, deep conversation with yourself, your intuition, because we interpret messages through symbolism that we receive through the cards.
Mm-hmm.
um to just like be in a safe space and be brave enough to just have the conversation, right?
Right.
Like, how can I
Right.
try to go down this rabbit hole and figure out if this is in alignment with my intuition or my mission or my purpose or
Mm-hmm.
my plans and goals, or if it's not? And sometimes
Right.
just starting with that question will lead you down a rabbit hole and you will eventually land on clarity. In
Right.
general, I think for me personally, it's actually a very different experience in my business life versus my activist life. With
Mm-hmm.
June's rescue story, that was like a very immediate emergency
Right.
situation.
Right.
And it's just
Yeah.
one of those
Yeah.
identity things where I'm also the kind of person who thinks clearly and acts well in emergency situations. I don't freeze,
Right.
I move. And
Right.
so I just have a natural skill set that helped me step up in that moment where I really didn't think about it. I'm
Yeah.
so deeply authentically tied to my own core values and my integrity that I didn't have to think about it. I immediately
Mm-hmm.
valued June's life so much that I was willing to
Mm.
risk my own bodily harm to save her life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
That's
question it. I was just like, someone's gonna die if
yeah.
someone, not
Yes.
something, because that's how I
Yes.
view June and other animals. It's like
Right.
someone's gonna get crushed by a car if I don't do something. Everybody's standing around freaking out.
Yeah.
Go. It's
Yeah.
just a moment. And
Yeah.
I think what led me to that moment was going through a whole multi-year long process before that of getting really in touch with who I am, what I believe in,
Yes.
and deeply understanding why that matters to me and practicing my core values on a daily basis. So that
Yes.
in that moment, it would have been the same thing if a human child was under that
Right.
truck and for
Right.
some reason everybody was just standing around freaking out. I would have done that for a human child. I would have done it for a dog, a chicken, anyone. And that's
Right.
just a part of who I am. And I was in the right place at the right time. And that's
Yeah.
magic. You can't plan that
Yes.
shit.
If I can just step in and highlight, I think everyone probably heard that, but I just want to highlight that again, is how important it is to be clear on your values. I think that's like, it sounds so cliche or like self-explanatory or obvious, but sometimes we literally just get clouded over, or like things just get really noisy, or we have competing priorities, or there's just times in life where I just had to just revisit, and we should do this often to be like, what do I really care about here? Is it this, or like is it this? And I think that is so at the core. And I'm so glad that you illuminated that, because again, it probably sounds really simple, but I don't think a lot of us do that on a day-to-day basis. Like, I mean, unless that's already in our practice, or like unless we're already really attuned and intuitive and like used to listening to ourselves, that connection with the values piece, I think, is a huge piece of connecting us with our intuition. I think it is like exactly what you said about that practice of like getting to know yourself really well and what you truly value. And that's such a difference in how certain people are building their business. It's either aligned with your values or it's not. And it's like, and a lot of that is, are you listening to your intuition? Are you asking yourself the right questions? Are you paying attention? Are you aware or not? So I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
Yeah. I think that's also a gift that comes through tarot if you use tarot intentionally to figure out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can
Yeah.
ask a tarot deck anything, and you will
Mm-hmm.
definitely get to know yourself better if you ask the questions that are honestly weighing on your heart and mind. And I
Mm,
think a lot of people are very curious about tarot right now, and they're kind of, someone described it to me as being a toe dipper, and I really liked that imagery, where it's like maybe they bought a deck that looks cool, but they don't really know how to work with it, and they don't really know
right.
what kind of questions to ask, and it's like, well, what's going on in there? Like, what is honestly weighing on your heart and mind? You have to
Yeah.
be brave enough to be honest with yourself to ask the right questions, and then you have to be brave enough to accept the answer you receive through your intuition, because that's the shit that's going to change your life. And then we get
Yes.
into tarot homework, which is deciding what you are literally going to go do after your tarot reading to take a measurable step forward towards what you want.
Yes. Huge.
So
So huge.
I loved what you said about needing to know your core values. And I've never really thought about this before, but that's a huge realization for me. I think core values and being able to follow your intuition are hand in hand. I think you really
Yes.
deeply have to know who you are on a soul
Yeah.
level, like what matters to you most and why, in order for
Yeah.
you to be able to follow your intuition.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
have to accept yourself in order to be able to follow your intuition. And if you
Yeah.
have not been the kind of person who thinks about these things all the time, is probably going to be very uncomfortable and scary for you at first. You might immediately accept a lot of truths about yourself that, you know, if you follow your intuition, people are going to notice, and you're going to have to deal
Mhm.
with the consequences of other people noticing that you are deciding to step into
Yeah.
transformation, and
Yes.
it's going to fuck with them. This happened to me when I went vegan, because as soon,
Mhm.
any vegan listening to this will know and laugh cynically
Mhm.
along with me, because
Mhm.
when you go vegan, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to tell people. You can just live your life, and people will be so disrupted by it because it reflects your own core values back to them.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
oh, no, 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 thank you for the offer. I don't want to have any chicken wings at the Super Bowl party because I'm vegan. And people might
Mhm.
not, know it except for on a subconscious level, but they get kind of triggered because they're like, oh shit,
Mhm.
this person is telling me that their core values aren't in alignment
In
with what
alignment.
I'm
Mhm.
doing. Am I a bad person for eating a
Mhm.
baby chicken's leg, in,
Mhm.
and just in
Mhm.
general? And then they have to be put in the position of like questioning, like, oh,
Yeah.
what are my core values? Am I out of alignment with my core values? Am I bad or something? And that fucks with people. And then you have to deal with the social consequences of fucking with other people's inner truths just by being yourself.
Yes. Yes. 100%. That is hitting the nail on the head. And that's probably what it feels scary sometimes, but you know, what's more important to you? At the end of the day, is it like just continued status quo and like maintain the same relationships and just like please and appease everybody, or are you willing to actually follow, like we said at the beginning, like follow what sets your soul on fire and what your true core values really are? I love it so much. So I want to just come back to this cunty decision that you're facing now, because it's directly correlated. This decision to embrace more of your vegan passion and help and support others to go vegan. Tell us more about how you're being cunty right now. Like, you being on this podcast is a huge cunty move. And tell us more about what else it took. What else is it taking you to follow your heart in this way? Follow your intuition in this way. Walk us through kind of how you're being cunty now.
It's a hot mess over here.
Yeah, but that's the realness. That's what we love.
And I think that's very important to talk about, because it's not polished, it's not comfortable, there's not a solid plan. It's a lot of surrendering to my inner truth and following my intuition. And this is maybe the most important thing that I will say on this podcast today. It's not, I think we want it to be this clean and clear moment. We want it to be a firm decision that we never waver on. But I think in reality, that's not how a lot of major life changes or pivots play out. And that is not at all how it has felt for me historically to follow my passion and my purpose and my intuition. I think it is a lot about self-exploration, and you grow and you stretch yourself every day. Like, I have been thinking about wanting to find a way to help people go vegan since I went vegan 12 years ago. And I've been thinking about trying to build a business around it in some way for as long as I've had my tarot business. This is not like a new idea. This is finally my internal battle is coming out of me after many, many years. And it's just the slow burn version of that relentless feeling of like, I just can't not do it anymore. It's driving me crazy. I'm caging myself. I am the only person holding myself back. I can't handle it. I have to do this. I feel scared and messy and vulnerable. I don't have a solid plan, but I'm doing the baby steps every day of following my intuition. And that is a muscle that you can practice. And because I've done so much intentional work around really understanding what my core values are and what matters the most to me, that is always my compass and my anchor. And my intuition is directly tied to that. So I just feel it. And I know logically, like, when I make decisions that align with my mission and my purpose, it feels scary, but it feels correct.
I just need to say how relieved and glad I am that you gave us this realness, because I think everybody, like, we are so used to seeing the polished, the, like, zero to hero stories, and then we feel lost and we feel like we're the only ones that are, struggling through a pivot or something. And I'm so glad that you just gave us the realness that, like, it's like a whole slow burn process where you're nurturing yourself along the way. You're like staying in touch with your values, you're listening to yourself, and you're doing things on your timing. And it's a messy process. So I just needed to say thank you for that. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I have to share something really specific and actionable about this.
Yes.
Because this is something that people can actually go work with. I also think that there is a certain kind of magic to intentionally practicing following your intuition based on your core values in teeny tiny micro steps on a daily basis, which can express itself through moments of self-care. Like if you're caught up in a community that's all about hustle culture, but you really are devoted to figuring out a morning routine, this is another part of my own story right now. It's like I've got a lot of 9 a.m. calls that I want to be on, even for like this 10K in 10 days challenge. But I have all of these healthy habits that I do for myself in the morning. And I've tried and failed and experimented with changing my daily routine as an entrepreneur for the last 4 years. And now I just know, according to my own inner compass and my intuition, I will regret it if I skip my morning yoga practice or bump it back to later in the day, because I know I'm not going to fucking do it later, because I never do. Like, I cannot be on that call right now. I can have the self-discipline to watch it later, but I need to stick to my self-care, and that's the foundation for my daily routine. And that's something that I'm really committed to now after questioning it for a long time and just knowing that about myself and practicing in these tiny moments how to stay committed to following my intuition and being on that journey all the time also prepares you for these magical moments of opportunity, because you can't plan when opportunity will find you. But I've, for example, been desiring this pivot in my business towards vegan lifestyle coaching for so long that when you asked me if I wanted to come on the podcast and talk about vegan things, I could immediately say yes. And it was scary and it was exciting, but it's because of all those micro baby steps I did to practice knowing my core values and following my intuition before that, that led me to being prepared for that moment of opportunity. It's really important to track your data too. Going back to the question of like, how do you learn how to listen to, trust, and follow your intuition? Track your own progress. Like if you know you've been in the habit for a long time, or maybe your whole life, of kind of like following the rules of society and staying in a box, maybe you had a corporate career and now you're shifting over to like being an entrepreneur with your own thing. You're trying to figure out like your mission or your purpose or whatever. Like, how's it going for you so far to deny your inner knowing or to avoid it, or trying not to stare at the heart of the truth of the matter that you know is going to change your life and is going to be really uncomfortable for a while? Are you happy? Are you healthy? Do you feel aligned now? Are you building a business around something you're really good at, but do you feel balanced and healthy and fulfilled on a daily basis? How much impact have you created through who you serve? Does that make you feel really lit up on a soul level? If not, then be real with yourself. Like maybe you're not being as cunty as you should be. And it's like, oh, I gotta like really stare at the heart of like, what do I really want to be doing? I keep making the decision to turn away from my core values or my intuition or these opportunities, and I just feel kind of stuck or scared or lost or burned out. Practice the tiny baby steps on a daily basis of not conforming to the norms around you, and start normalizing the radical shit that you want to see in the world on a small level, so that you can build your courage up to do the big action steps on a bigger level when those opportunities meet you halfway. And it can be one of those urgent impulse decisions where it's just like, oh, I just went. I just jumped under the car. I just said yes to the podcast episode. I just put that offer out there. I just, whatever. There are those life-changing moments where we make decisions, but they are rare and few and far between. But in the few and far between, there are all those daily gems where it was like, but I was cunty in a little way that day. I decided to do the yoga practice instead of jumping on an 8 a.m. call.
I just really want to highlight and say how radical that data tracking that you were talking about just a mere moments ago, like, you never hear those being the KPIs that business owners track, you know? But this is kind of what I was getting at when I was dissecting, like, okay, different forms of ROI. Let's also redefine different KPIs to track, right? It's up to us as business owners at the end of the day to decide how we are doing our life, right? And I think about that often, of that be careful what you wish for type of thing. Be careful what you're like, what rosy picture you're painting, because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're sacrificing a lot, it's probably not going to be that rosy picture that you might have envisioned.
This is another reason why I will just die on the hill of telling people to learn how to follow and trust their own intuition forever. Because when you, and it's not just like Instagram culture, when you're looking up to people and aspiring to build businesses like theirs or live lifestyles like theirs or have impact like them, if you're modeling your own plans and goals and trajectory around someone else's story, it's almost like guaranteed that you're going to end up making their same mistakes too. And you don't know what those are until they tell you about them 5 years after they've experienced them. You know,
Right.
You have to stay true to yourself, and it will almost absolutely always mean that you are doing something different from everybody else and you're going to feel weird about it. But you are setting yourself up for this constant chase and this cycle of seeking something that's going to give you that feeling that you want to feel forever if you do not start with and keep coming back to, like, what feels true to me today, right now. Like, what are my core values? What matters the most to me? Am I living in alignment with my own inner compass? Am I brave enough to ask myself the honest questions I really know I need the answers to? Am I willing to sit with and accept the answers that come from within myself? And am I willing to take action on those things in alignment with my purpose and my goals?
So you have multiple ways that you can help people. So if people have been listening to this episode and they're saying, like, man, I really would love a tarot reading. I have questions that I'm pondering right now. I'm stuck, or I really just want someone to help me give this space to, like, go deeper and process something. Tell them how they can go about booking that with you. And then also, if someone is like, this is my moment. I have been wanting to go vegan. I've been, nursing this idea. And now Maddie is here to, like, help me actually do the thing. Please let our people know what the next steps are with you.
Thank you so much for letting me share that with people.
Of course.
My Substack newsletter is my new HQ on the internet where you can find all of the things. So we'll drop a link in the show notes for my Substack homepage, and there are a couple different publications. I would suggest that people subscribe to a Wildlife Tarot weekly newsletter. That's the name of my tarot business, a Wildlife Tarot.
Yes.
And there's also a forthcoming Vegan Things publication that is brand new. So if you subscribe now, you will definitely be a founding member of what's to come. And both of those are free. And we'll also drop, like, a Linktree link that has more direct links to how to book a reading with me. You can pick a date and time and you can pay through that same link. And I just created a link for booking a discovery call with me for vegan lifestyle coaching. And it'll be a very chill conversation where you can ask me a bunch of questions and I'll give you some advice. And I can also figure out if we would be a good fit for me to help you figure out how to go vegan and stay vegan and have a good time while you do it.
Yes. So exciting. I'm so excited for you going forward and just continuing to align yourself with your purpose and finally answering this call that has been like on your heart for so long. And you're like, I'm sick of like not answering this call. It's so inspiring. So many of us need to be brave and cunty and do things like this and follow our heart and follow our fire. So thank you today for helping us and giving us the permission and reminding us that it's not just about us. It's about so much more. It's about so much bigger than us, right? And that's a reason in itself to go forth and be brave and cunty to change the world for the better. Thank you so much for this incredible conversation. We will drop everything in the show notes, everybody, the links, and also the link to Maddie's amazing Substack, because she is indeed a fabulous writer and she will pull cards for you and just help you feel grounded on a weekly basis, which is just so incredible. Thank you so much, Maddie. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me. I love you.
Yay. I love you too.